Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick for Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network, and this is the latest Take Five. So some bad news, but not unexpected. Dru Smith has torn his Achilles tendon. It was fairly obvious when he did it against the Nets. He seemed to know it right away. And this is a really sad, hopefully not end to his Miami Heat story. Of course, this is a guy who went from being a player that nobody wanted, nobody wanted, even people in the front office weren't exactly sure why Eric Spoelstra was so fixated on him. The fans, of course, didn't even want him to get a two-way either of the past 2 years. And then they were hoping that he got a standard contract. That's how well he played, and that's how much his story resonated with everyone as he started to show the results on the court. Now, of course, this comes a year after he tore his ACL in Cleveland. That was another unfortunate incident. In that case, it was due to the court design. He comes back from that earlier than expected, started to feel really good in camp, and then as he got himself into the back end of the rotation, provided a defensive presence at the point of attack that, frankly, the Heat really don't have without him, with the exception of Haywood Highsmith, of course, plays in the front court. So not only was Dru Smith playing, he was playing fourth quarter minutes. He was playing crunch time minutes, and there was a chance that he ultimately could have become a starter with his team if they decided to go with more of a defensive mindset in that starting group. And so now, as he's out for the season, the Heat have some decisions to make, because it was fairly clear, and in fact I confirmed it last night, that Dru Smith was going to get that standard contract. The Heat have 2 open standard spots right now. They have to fill one in the next week by league rule. They'll probably leave the other one open for a period of time, but the conventional wisdom was they were going to promote Dru Smith to the standard contract and then maybe give Isaiah Stevens, who is still in the G League and playing very well, another point guard, smaller point guard than Dru Smith, different kind of point guard, more of a set up the offense type player. And of course, he was with the Heat in camp and played with them in Summer League. We thought he would probably get the the two-way contract with Dru Smith getting promoted to the standard. Now all of that is up in the air. Now, one thing I did find out last night is that Dru can continue to work with the team, rehab with the team, even if he's cut from the two-way, because the injury happened while he was with the Heat. So there's no concern there. They could cut him loose and, again, still have him around the facility and then try to bring him back next season if he's healthy, and that's what they choose to do. I don't know if they'll do that, though. There are a couple of veteran guards, young veteran guards, who are out there in free agency. Now, look, whenever these guys are out there, there's a reason, okay? So Dennis Smith Jr., who's a favorite of a lot of Heat fans, who was been trying to come to Miami for a while. In fact, if Dame had come to Miami, he probably would have been here last season. Of course, he grew up with Bam. They know each other well. He just went on the OG's podcast. He knows a lot of people, a lot of Heat fans already, so Heat fans are calling for him. But he's been out there for a little while. I mean, he's a very good defensive guard. Of course, hasn't really panned out as a top 10 pick in terms of his overall game, but he's a good defensive guard. But there's a reason, again, that teams pass on these players. Markelle Fultz is another one who's been mentioned. Of course, that's the former number 1 overall pick, had problems with his shot, with his shoulder, became a good defender in Orlando. But again, he's been out there for a while, and no team has really bid on him. So I wouldn't guarantee that the Heat are going to give a standard to either of those players. They could promote Keyshawn Johnson, even though we haven't seen a lot of him yet, and it doesn't seem like the Heat need as much help in the front court as the back court. And then they could give Isaiah Stevens the two-way after that. Or there could be, and I want people to consider this, there could be a player that Adam Simon and his scouting staff have been looking at for a while that they could add who'll be somebody totally out of left field. So it's not clear exactly what they're going to do right now. But again, the sad story is Dru Smith, who really, really is, I mean, if you've talked to him, one of the most humble Heat players I've ever encountered, and we had him on the podcast recently, really enjoyed that time. He didn't deserve this, and he certainly deserves the Heat to do right by him as they can. And, of course, there's not a lot that they can do financially, but certainly they're going to monitor him, and hopefully he'll be back with the team next year. Ethan Skolnick for Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network.